Now, the JSE facing mixed screens from Asia and other global counterparts this morning, while local traders await the latest inflation data from Stats SA. That's going to be at around 10 a.m. Jimmy Moyaha is independent markets analyst, joining us now for an update on the latest market moves at the JSE. Mr. Moyaha, thank you very much for your time. Your quick overview of the local index and how it's faring in early trade.
Good morning, Tully. Morning to our viewers. Early market sessions are looking very mixed. We've got a couple of stocks in the red, mostly in the red actually. Some of them are in the green. I think the big surprise so far is we're sitting with Telkom down a further 20-odd%, 24-odd% at this stage. So seeing a big drop there. We've got Naspers down 2.5% as well. The top 40 in general just trading in the red at the moment, struggling to break back above that 60,000 points mark since it's broken below. So we're sitting at around 59,100 at the moment. The rand back above 18 rand, or holding above 18 rand against the dollar, sitting at around 18 rand 20, back from those 18 rand 60 highs. We've got the pound still at about 20 rand and 50 cents, and the euro edging closer to 18 rand there as well. We're sitting at about 17 rand 80 there at the moment, 17.87 at the moment there. Gold trading down, and oil crucially below the $90 a barrel mark, which isn't something that the OPEC countries are going to want to see. So we'll see. We'll have to wait and see if there will be further interventions from that part.
We've already mentioned Stats SA. They're expected to publish the latest information, or should I say inflation print, for the month of September. Should we expect more pain when it comes to basic foodstuffs as consumers?
Well, the consensus at the moment is that inflation will come in marginally lower, sitting at probably around 7.5% from the 7.6% previous print, and core inflation, or core CPI, will sit at about 4.5 from the previous 4.4, which isn't a significant change at this stage. I mean, we know that our central bank governor announced in this week that until they see a sustained decline in inflation, or they see inflation back towards that 4.5% target that they have in mind, we're not going to see any reprieve from an interest rate perspective, and that is going to affect consumers that are more on the borrowing side, which is most of the country. So from that perspective, we would hope to see a better print, but it's unlikely we'll see much movement at this stage. We'll probably see in the next inflation print, and depending on what the central bank then does with interest rate decisions, if we see another rate hike, that could assist the inflation number in coming down, but that would of course put even more pressure on an already strained consumer at this stage.
Big news coming out of the South African Reserve Bank yesterday, and that is that central bank has seized more than 1.4 billion worth of assets belonging to former Steinhoff CEO Marcus Jooste. Question for you: has the Steinhoff share price responded at all to that development?
Well, not significantly enough. I mean, the Steinhoff share price has been trading below the 2 rand level for quite some time, sitting at around 1 rand 85 at the moment. We know that the bulk of the movement sort of took place when the initial Steinhoff news hit the media, and the accounting irregularities were sort of brought to light. And we've since seen the Steinhoff share price sort of struggle to come back above the 2 rand a share price. It's been as low as 1 rand 70, so it's sitting at about 1 rand 85 at the moment. Not much movement from there. It's interesting that the announcement around the assets that were seized from that perspective, a lot of them were sitting in a trust to which Marcus is not a direct beneficiary of the trust, but of the 1.4 billion rand of assets that were seized there, I think about 1.3 billion almost is sitting in a separate trust. But it should be interesting to see how that unfolds, because there are other assets sitting with other associates of Mr. Jooste, including vehicles and artworks and that sort of thing. So it'll be interesting to see how those are recovered by the Reserve Bank. But from a Steinhoff share price perspective, I think the share price at the moment is more reflective of the assets that remain within the Steinhoff portfolio rather than this recent news.
Let's conclude the conversation with the BHP Group Limited releasing the operational view for the quarter of for the quarter, which ended on the 30th of September 2022. You'll pardon my slight pause there. Talk us through their numbers. How are they looking?
So BHP came out with their first quarter updates to just say that they are still on track in terms of guidance and expectations for the full financial year. Not too many surprises there from their perspective. Copper production up about 7%, nickel production up about 16%, iron ore production up about 3%. But they did crucially mention that they are embarking on a lot more decarbonization projects in efforts to reduce their carbon emissions at a group level. Their focus is a lot in the Australian region. We know that they are a Western Australian iron ore port. They've recently signed a purchasing power agreement there for renewable energy to replace the electricity energy that's being generated there. So that'll halve carbon emissions by their estimates in that port region. They also announced that they've reached a memorandum of understanding with Tata Steel in India for the renewable or the decarbonized production of steel, which is something that BHP has been wanting to do as well. I mean, if you remember, I think it was last week or the week before, they also requested an additional increase in one of their iron ore mines in Australia, citing that increase of useful life by about 90 years would be used to focus on the decarbonization of the steel space and the production of steel in that respect. They are also looking at the transport of their copper business and reducing the carbon emissions around that. So a lot of their update now is centered around the fact that guidance will remain the same, despite some headwinds that they are expecting to come through by the way of supply chain disruptions and continued macroeconomic factors that we have seen play out over the last couple of months. They've said that they're still quite comfortable. Their balance sheet is strong enough, and for the moment, they're not going to review guidance down or up. It's still very much in line there.
Jimmy Moyaha is independent markets analyst. Thank you very much for that markets update.